Jen.
Good morning. Today's scripture reading is from Luke chapter 24, verses 1 through 12. On the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were wondering about this, suddenly 2 men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. In their fright, the women bowed down with their faces to the ground, but the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, he is risen. Remember how he told you while he was still with you in Galilee, the Son of Man must be delivered over to the hands of sinners, be crucified, and on the third day be raised again." Then they remembered his words. When they came back from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11 and to all the others. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the others with them who told this to the apostles. But they did not believe the women because their words seemed to them like nonsense. Peter, however, got up and ran to the tomb. Bending over, he saw the strips of linen lying by themselves, and he went away, wondering to himself what had happened. Luke 24, verses 1 through 12, the word of the Lord. You may be seated.
My name is Walt. I'm one of the pastors here, and it's so good to be with you today. You know, we live in a really interesting time when it comes to religion and spirituality in our culture. We good? Oh. All right, great. For a long time, there has been reports of downward trends when it comes to Americans' participation in the church, trust of spiritual communities, belief in Jesus, and applying the teachings of Jesus in their day-to-day lives. But recently, things have begun to shift a little bit. There's been a noticeable uptick in spiritual interest. For example, first-time Bible purchases have been way up. Bible app downloads are soaring. The YouVersion Bible app recently hit 1 billion downloads. More and more people are reporting an interest in spiritual conversations. But what's even more interesting is who is leading the charge. Gen Z. Let's go. Let's hear it for all the Gen Zers in here, right? Which is a lot of you. Okay, great. Clap it up. And there's some really interesting stats that kind of help fill this picture out a little bit. Gen Zers are now the generation with the highest rate of Sunday church attendance, just edging out me and my fellow millennials. And guys, I'm here every week. All right, so I'm doing my best here. Let's see if we can retake the top spot. Right. This increase has been particularly noteworthy among Gen Z men, which is a sharp contrast to other social statistics outlining the problem of male loneliness. And lastly, when a group of non-Christian Gen Zers were polled, 48% that they said they are open to learning about Jesus, which is a fascinating statistic. Gen Z or not, maybe you are also finding yourself leaning in when it comes to questions of faith, spirituality, and Jesus. Maybe you have been feeling this itch, this pull to connect to something bigger than yourself, and you came to Hope today wondering if this is a place where you might find it. If that's you, I am so glad that you're here. And even if you came just because you heard about the free ice cream after service, or somebody important to you twisted your arm with promises of free ice cream after service, I'm so glad you're here as well. Easter Sunday is an exciting day for so many reasons, but one of the biggest for me is that we see so many new faces, new people coming into our community because for one reason or another, they feel drawn into this kind of space. So, what is behind this spiritual uptick? There are a lot of reasons why someone might find themselves leaning in spiritually. But as I've been in conversations with members of our community here at Hope about their spiritual journey, and I've been hearing the stories of others, one theme has really risen to the top, and that's this. So many people have gone after everything that the world has to offer: career success, financial independence, comfort, pleasure, adventure, accomplishments, accolades, prestige, all the things that our culture says makes for a meaningful life. They have gone after these things, and one of two things has happened. Either they got what they were striving for, and then they looked around and thought, is that it? Is that all there is? Or they didn't get what they were looking for, and they were left feeling disillusioned, confused, like a failure. And in both instances, they were left with questions of, what am I living for? How do I know if I'm a valuable person? What does it mean to live the right way anyway? Have you ever asked questions like that? Did you ever have the experience of getting everything you wanted only to feel a bit let down? Or did you miss out on some of your biggest goals in life and you've been left reeling? The story of Jesus has answers to all of these questions. Today, many of us are gathered here because we're eager to celebrate or at least learn more about the death and resurrection of Jesus, and we're going to get there. But before he died, Jesus gave us one of his most memorable and also one of his most misunderstood teachings. He said this. He said, "Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it." Many have heard this illustration and thought that there is something secretive or elusive about Jesus. And only if you were, smart enough to crack the code or hardcore enough to be able to walk down this road will you find the life that Jesus is talking about. But I don't think that's what Jesus is saying here. I think Jesus is trying to help his listeners understand the reality of the world that they are in. Wide is the gate, and broad is the road that leads to destruction. It sounds ominous. And it certainly is a warning that we need to pay attention to. But I also think it's something that we're a lot more familiar with than we might be first inclined to believe. When it comes to building a life that feels successful or feels right, there are so many options, an exhausting number of options out there. Many of us have walked down a road to get us precisely where we are. We went to the right schools and killed ourselves to succeed so we could get that internship or that residency or that entry-level role that was going to get us to the next step, and so on. Or maybe we took a non-traditional path because for as long as we can remember, there have been people who have been depending on us. And so we have just been grinding it out because we know we are not going back to that kind of life. Perhaps every step we've taken has been weighted down by parental or family expectations. I once knew a guy who was named Harvard in the hopes that he would one day go there. He didn't get in. That's awkward, right? Maybe your parents didn't literally name your life plans after you, but perhaps those plans have been imprinted on you in other ways. Where you should live, what job you should have, what kind of person you should marry, and you've been trying to be a dutiful son or daughter, but that burden's heavy. Maybe we got a taste of that good life. We got that commission, we got that promotion, maybe our parents are covering our rent, no judgment, right? We have been able to indulge those dreams of a life of leisure, fun. We've been to the top restaurants, hottest clubs, exotic trips. Maybe we've chased the thrills of recreational drugs, hookups, other hype behaviors. We've gotten everything we thought we would want, and then at the end of the day, it still feels hollow. That initial dopamine hit has worn off. And we've had some great Saturday nights, but come Sunday morning, we might be wondering, what are we doing? Some of us might be experiencing the dark side of that same coin. We aren't partying so much as we are self-medicating because we've just got so much by way of pain, trauma, depression, anxiety. We aren't trying to escape the grind so much as we are trying to escape our fears, our past, our failures, and we too are left wondering, what is life about? Many of us probably have a vision for companionship, love, but that's not panning out for one reason or another. We're working the apps, but it just feels like we're bouncing from one awkward coffee to the next. Or we were in a long-term relationship where we poured in a ton of time and energy, but it ended. And now we're wondering if we just wasted the best years of our lives. Or we did meet the one. And marriage started off great. But now, things are on the rocks. Or maybe we didn't make it after all. And that marriage came to a painful end. Maybe you're trying for kids and it's just not happening, and you're wondering what your future holds. Will those longings and dreams ever be realized? There are so many things that we might try to build our lives upon. And I didn't even touch on political figures or platforms, the future of our nation, the future of our kids, our fitness, our health, our personal brand, the culture of influence, causes we're passionate about. We could be here all day. All day. It is exhausting just how broad and just how wide this list is. I'm tired from even talking about it for 5 minutes. And this is the road that Jesus was talking about. Again, Jesus said, "For wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it." Some of us, especially if we've been in the church for a while, we might hear this verse and be tempted to think like, okay, right, there's a lot of bad stuff out there. It's going to hurt. I better stay away from it and live a righteous and moral and upright life, right? And that's true. There's plenty of problematic stuff out there that we should try to avoid. But as I was listing out things that we might try to build our life on, there's a lot of good stuff in there too. Family, a good job, meaningful relationships, health. Well, what's wrong with that? Here's what I think Jesus is saying in this verse. There are a million things in this world that you might make your sole aim, that you will derive your purpose and identity from. And many of them are good things. But if they become the thing, the ultimate thing for your life, your reason for being, then they're all going to end at one point. And that's death. Now, that might sound kind of like a strong statement, a little surprising. Let me break it down for you. Overwork, overindulgence, being overwhelmed are all connected to physical ailments that wear us down over time. And hey, look, all of us are headed to the same end for one reason or another in that regard. But when the Bible talks about death, it means physical death, true, but it also encompasses relational death, our unrepaired and unresolved and broken relationships, as well as spiritual death. How our constant pursuit of approval or purpose or worth will erode our very souls. And there are many ways onto this road, but it only ends up in one place. Back in the very beginning of 2020, I remember looking at my life and thinking, like, what is happening? Because the singular message that I really had in my mind and continue to carry is like, hey, you can kind of do what you want, but like you better be good at it. Be good at whatever it is you're doing. Be successful at whatever it is you're doing. But when I looked around, my work as a pastor, my role as a husband and a father, I just felt like a failure on all fronts. Every area of meaning in my life, I just feel like I am just blowing it here, and I don't know how to get up to the top, but it's January 2020, February 2020, so I'm like, I'm just going to keep moving as fast as I can go and just try to work harder, be better. And then March of 2020 hit around, and we all know what happened there, and all of a sudden I'm trapped in an apartment with all of my failures, these painful relationships that I was like, I don't know how I'm going to make this work. And it felt like everything that I had been basing my life on up until that point was just, the bottom was falling out. And I felt completely crushed and overwhelmed and confused and alone. I felt like I was experiencing a kind of death. Have you ever put your hope or your worth in a goal or a person or an outcome, and it didn't pan out? What was that like? How did that feel? Where did it leave you? I can imagine that perhaps like me, it was a time of pain and confusion and sorrow and dismay and doubt. And if you have ever felt like that, then you probably know exactly how these women were feeling on the very first Easter morning, some 2,000 years ago. Our story today opens on the first day of the week. Very early in the morning, the women took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. Now, these women had been longtime followers of Jesus. They had seen him teach about life with God that they had not heard anybody teach before. They'd seen him cross social and cultural barriers, heal people, perform miraculous signs. He was different from any person that they had ever met. He was different from any person that anybody had ever met. And they wondered, maybe he might be the one that God had promised to come and save us from oppression and injustice and death. But just 2 days prior to that morning, Jesus had died. And he didn't just get the flu. He was publicly betrayed, humiliated, tortured, and executed on a cross. You know, today Easter mornings are usually marked by peeps and pastels, and like I'm all about that life, you know. But that first morning was dark. It was drenched with sorrow and grief. I mean, Jesus had done a lot of amazing things, but nobody had escaped death. And they had been basing their entire life around this man, around what he said, around what he did. Things had seemed so promising, but now all they were looking at was a tomb. A vault of death that no one ever escaped from. And so when Jesus died, their dreams of this new world died as well. Like, do you know that kind of darkness? You know, I think about them that morning and that experience. I don't know if you've had this experience, but like something awful has happened in your life and you go to sleep and then you wake up and you get like a sliver of a moment where you haven't really remembered that. And then all of a sudden you remember. And in the darkness, you are just crushed again by the loss, and the grief, and the sorrow. It just comes rushing back. The women brought spices to the tomb to honor Jesus' body, but they were also bringing their grief and loss with them. But when they got there, they found something unusual. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. Now, gravestones did not just roll away. They were massive, heavy boulders that could only be moved by a group of strong men. Perhaps Jesus' body had been dragged away by the Romans, or by grave robbers for further desecration. But then why leave the expensive linen behind? But as the women were standing in the tomb, wondering what happened, suddenly 2 men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. And these men, messengers from God, asked the women one of the most significant questions that I think any of us could ever be asked. Why do you look for the living among the dead? Why do you look for the living among the dead? Here is the irony of our lives that the Christian story points out. All too often, we spend our whole lives looking for things that will give us life, meaning, and purpose. Only they don't. They ultimately end up in death and destruction. As the song says, we go looking for love in all the wrong places. And many of us think that this is the only way to do it. This is the only way to live life is to pursue these things that we hope won't let us down, but they do. But the Christian story asks us, why do you look for life in places that will only bring you death? Why are you looking for the living among the dead? But here's the amazing twist. The women came to the tomb that morning expecting to find death, and the miracle of the first Easter was that there is no death to be found. It was the proclamation of new life, the evidence of new life, the hope of new life. They thought they were coming to a tomb where death was the final word, but instead, life had exploded out of it. What happened? Jesus chose the narrow gate. After Jesus spoke about the wide road, he said, "Small is the gate, and narrow the road that leads to life." You know, for a long time when I read this passage, I just thought this gate and road Jesus was talking about was kind of like a nice country lane kind of thing, like very pleasant, very inviting. But that's not what he's saying here. The Greek words for narrow and small mean tight, restrictive, pressing, crushing. Right? I don't know about you, but there are a few things that give me the heebie-jeebies, like cave diving. Right? Like being stuck in a super tight space, like that just freaks me out. But this is what Jesus is talking about with the narrow gate. Passing through this gate squeezes the life out of you. Passing through this gate feels like death, because it is death. And in many ways, this gate is not shaped with this like nice wrought iron frame. This gate is shaped like a tomb. The broad road starts miles wide with a million different options to find life, but it all leads to one place, death. But the narrow road starts at a gate shaped like a tomb. It looks impossibly tight, and yet when we pass through it, it leads out to expansive, spacious life on the other side. Throughout his entire life, Jesus proclaimed a message of life. He said, "I have come that they may have life and have it to the full." This is a life free of fear, of anxiety, of shame, of bitterness, of oppression. It's a life free from wondering, am I enough? Am I lovable? Am I going to be okay? It's a life that doesn't let unresolved relationships, conflicted relationships be the last word. It's a life that points towards reconciliation and restoration. This is a life in which sickness and death and despair themselves are not the end. But there is hope that Jesus could conquer even death itself. Is that not the life that so many of us yearn for? Jesus famously said, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die." Do you believe this? Jesus has not come just to give us some pro tips, some words of wisdom, some rules to live by. Jesus has come to bring us out of death itself. When I was a kid, I remember walking with my dad along this pier over a body of water, and I remember asking him, "Hey, Dad, if I fell in, would you jump after me?" And he's like, "Yes, I would." And I said, "Okay, what if you were wearing a tuxedo?" And he's like, yeah, I would still jump in after you." I was like, whoa, my kid brain was blown. I was like, oh my gosh, my dad loves me that much that he would be willing to maybe mess up a tuxedo to save me. Wow, he must really love me. When people love us in what we perceive to be lavish, costly, unexpected ways, it takes us back a little bit. This is for me? You love me this much? And this is the beauty of the Christian story. That Jesus sees us languishing, flailing in death, as a result of all the choices we made, all the things we had put our hopes in that failed us, all the mistakes we made in our lives. He sees us sinking. Spiritual, relational, and physical death. And he jumps in after us. Jesus steps in to the deepest places of human pain and failure and death to bring us out to life. Jesus dove into the tomb because that's where we were. And you go after what you love. But for Jesus, the tomb was not the end point. The tomb was just the beginning. He went through the narrow gate, through the tomb, through the darkness of death, and then by the power of God, he came out on the other side, on the path to life. And that's why he was not there when the women had come to the tomb, because death could not hold him. The women went back to the disciples to tell them what they saw. In the ancient world, the testimony of women was not admitted in court. But Jesus was doing a new thing. Jesus was making a new world. And the women told them that the tomb was empty, but the men, being men, didn't believe them. However, Peter got up and ran to the tomb, and bending over, he saw the strips of linen lying by themselves. And he went away, wondering to himself what had happened. They didn't understand that Jesus did exactly what he said he was going to do. As the two angelic men said at the tomb, "He is not here, he has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still with you in Galilee. The Son of Man must be delivered over to the hands of sinners, be crucified, and on the third day be raised again." They didn't understand. But soon they would. Because later that day, Jesus appeared in their very midst. And what do you think his first words were to them after defeating death itself? "I'm back. I told you. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. You guys are the worst friends ever." No. Jesus' very first words to the men who had utterly abandoned him just a few days earlier were this: "Peace be with you." Peace. This word for peace doesn't simply mean an absence of conflict. It means wholeness. Like a broken bone that has been set right and mended back together. Jesus invites them into a new life in which they have been made whole. It's this life to the full that he spoke of before, a new kind of life, a life that is free of fear and anxiety, even in our darkest moments. A life that knows that we are loved and valued all the way down, so we don't need to go chasing after other things that we think will tell us that we are okay, that we are lovable, that we are worthy, because we have it already, all the way to the very depths of our beings. It's a life that is free from shame, that knows the realities of forgiveness and grace. It is a life that is quick to extend love and extend forgiveness to others, because we ourselves have already got our full share. So now we can invest in the lives of those whom we love without asking them to tell us that we matter, that we are worthy of love, that we are valuable, that we have purpose. We can just give ourselves away because we have been given everything we already need. When Jesus said, "I am the resurrection and the life," this is what he was talking about. This is the resurrection life that Jesus has won for us. Jesus famously said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Friends, how many of you are tired, striving, straining, flailing? How many of you are tired of wondering, am I enough? Will I be enough? Am I lovable? Have I succeeded enough? Have I done enough? How many of you are tired of constantly coming up against a wall and just saying, I just might not be cut out for this world? Because everything I try to do just falls apart. So what hope do I even have? Jesus says, come to me, all you who are weary, and I will give you rest. You know, so many of these good things that we love, the relationships with the people we love, work that is meaningful, serving others in need, contributing to beauty and creativity in our world, so many of these good things are good. But they were never meant to be the thing. They were never meant to bear the weight of our own value and of our own worth. But Jesus says, I can do it. That's exactly why I came. That's exactly the life that I want to give. If you were following with Jesus, if you've been following Jesus for any amount of time, I can imagine that, like me, you resonate with this pull to go back to trying to put your worth, value, life on one of these countless things that is just going to fall apart. And even if you aren't a follower of Jesus, even if you're here just out of simple curiosity or love or duty to a friend or family member, I wonder if perhaps this might give some language to your experiences. Looking for love in the wrong places, looking for life in the wrong places. And this is why I'm so grateful that we have a space like this in which we can gather on Easter Sunday, because it's not just about the music and the ice cream and the egg hunts. Like the women at the tomb, we are called to remember. And that's what we do here. We remember what Jesus has said, that he has suffered, died, and rose again, just as he said. It's an invitation to remember who we were created to be. For some of us, that might feel like a kind of a traditional reminder, like, yes, thank you, I needed to know that. For others of us, this might feel like almost like a waking up. Like I had been walking in this other way of living for so long that the reality of who I've been made to be feels distant and faded. But friends, it is there. And perhaps Jesus is inviting you to wake up to the reality of his full life today. Friends, this is the hope of Easter. That we are loved. That God is with us in the darkest of moments. And that Jesus gives us the kind of life that will satisfy, the kind of life that we have been created to be, whole, full, abundant life, resurrection life with him and his people forever.